just this year in Jerusalem, we found an object from a moment just before all those reforms started taking place.
Mm.
And this was a seal that belonged to a senior Jewish figure called Yeho'ezer. So this is a seal that he's going to use to certify documents, to seal letters, to put his imprimatur on things. Very, very important item to him that really stands for his authority and his integrity. Senior Jewish figure. What's the picture on that seal? It's an Assyrian Dingir or genie or Anunnaki.
Yeah.
You know, the classic winged Anunnaki. He saw no conflict between his worldview and having an Anunnaki on his ring for his seal. Because at that time, Judaism still spoke about the Elohim, still remembered the Tseva Hashemayim, still remembered what they looked like because the Jerusalem temple hadn't been defaced so you could no longer see images of them. The Nehushtan hadn't been confiscated so you could no longer see what Yahweh looked like. And in their minds, the Elohim of Judaism were all part of this wider family of stories of Elohim, Tingir, Anunnaki, Anuna. There was no conflict.
Right.
And that is a real object discovered just this year to tell you that Judaism was something different before these ritual and narrative changes were brought in.
Right. Absolutely. That's just incredible.
And then you see that object, you're going to go back and you're going to read the Bible differently.
Yeah. I want to see this thing. Again, we're going to superimpose it over this video. It's just incredible. I remember reading in the Old Testament, it said they came across the Anak, and we were grasshoppers in their eyesight. So a reference there to some really big people, and they call them the Anak, which I thought was interesting since, you know, the ancient texts talk about the Anunnaki and the Anuna. It seems like there's references of these beings as many different names all around the world.
That's right. I mean, in the plural, they're referred to as the Anakim, which sounds strangely like Anunnaki. And you've got Anak and the Anactorians in another part of the world. You've got Anak with a Q in the Muslim tradition. And the idea of there being much bigger people living in the world does repeat all around the world. It seems to be a bit of a taboo these days to talk about giants or people who are much, much bigger in the past. I don't know why it's become a taboo. It wasn't in the 19th century when we were digging up giant finds. And it wasn't, if you go to Josephus, he's completely unembarrassed by these stories. And he says in his writing, the Greek legends of the Titans, that's really their version of our memories of people like the Anakim and the men of renown produced through hybridization in Genesis 6. So Josephus saw these stories as referring to real cultural memory of sharing the planet with much bigger people. And I wonder also if there are memories of the time when we did share the planet with the Gigantopithecus and with the Denisovans and with the Chinese dragon people and with Homo floresiensis and the Neanderthals. There was a time when the human type was much, much more diverse.
Yes.
And we shouldn't be surprised to have cultural stories that seem to carry that memory. So I don't know why there's such a taboo around it today.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. It's just why the taboo, I don't even know. But I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of fear. I think a lot of people have been put in a fear state when it comes to their religion. And this fear prevents them from asking, looking deeper, researching deeper, trying to get a better understanding, because I think in some ways they think that they're offending their God, or that's at least what I think they believe.
Yes, I think some people construct their faith like a Jenga tower. These, I don't know if you've ever played Jenga, where you've got these little wooden blocks, you build a tower, and then you have to pull little pieces out and see if the towers still stand up.
Yeah.
And I think some people carry their faith in that way. And if you start pulling out a piece down here, like, do we have to read the Bible in a fundamentalist way? Were there giants? Was Asherah a real entity? Is Elohim really plural? They think if you pull that piece out, the whole tower's going to collapse and they won't have anything left. Whereas I think it's more helpful to have all your Jenga pieces on the table so you can pick them up one at a time and look at it and talk about it and consider what's going on there. And when you go to theological college to train for the ministry, or if you go to university and study theology as I did, they force you to put all the Jenga pieces on the table. We're going to look at them, one at a time. We're going to do different courses over 3 or 4 years so that we can look at these things individually. And it can be scary for people because they think, am I going to be able to put that tower back together again? Because I get a lot of comfort from my faith, and it seems to explain my life and experiences that I have. I don't want to be in a position where I can't put it back together again. And I think it's that kind of fear that comes in. Whereas as someone who's sort of been through that process a couple of times, because it happened when I did my honors degree in theology, and then it happened again when I started studying the Mesopotamian sources and had to go back to the Bible to re-understand what was there. There is a little bit of reframing that has to go on. It can be unsettling, but for me, it is incredibly enriching. For me, truth can only be enriching, can only be empowering, even if there's a little bit of uncertainty en route.
Right. Absolutely. This is an incredible discussion, man. This is really, really good. I'm glad we decided to do this because I'm getting a lot of incredible confirmation from you. And I'm also learning so much as well because you're giving me a lot of key points that I know myself now. I want to go back and dig into and research and look at it and gain some of my own perspectives as well, which is important. I think everyone should be able to do that. Everyone should have the right to ask questions, to dig deeper, to not be afraid to research and to look into what they believe in without feeling any type of punishment or anything that's going to come to harm them. I believe it's my God-given right to be able to look deeper into anything I come across.
Yes, I think so. I think there are forms of Christianity that have discouraged curiosity, unfortunately. So, I mean, there's this verse that often gets repeated, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And you don't want to do that. There's this doctrine of the fall that says, well, your own understanding is impaired. So, better not get too far into the world of logic and reason because you're going to make a mistake. And Christians can be made very anxious rather than curious. Whereas I find, especially when I read the Gospels and I try to get to the root meaning of the key words in Jesus' teaching, he's actually trying to stoke our curiosity. And there's plenty in the Old Testament as well from some of the later prophets and in the devotional writings that would want us to be seekers, truth seekers, explorers, want us to be curious. And I think it's a shame that very often, both in Catholic and Reformed Christianity, curiosity has been discouraged, even to the point of the church pushing back on new science and new discoveries. Yeah,
I know. It's there's a verse, because some people seem to get extremely agitated when they hear me talk about the fact that I believe that we are gods, that God is in us and we're inside of God. In other words, I believe that we're a fractal of God, not that we're a God that we can create a universe, but I believe in the fractal mathematics of the universe, and which is a mathematical formula that has been discovered and well documented called the Mandelbrot set. And that Mandelbrot set shows that we're living in this created reality. So yes, the Bible is right, the Quran is right, all these indigenous cultures around the world, I believe they're accurate. We're living in a creation. It just describes the mathematics behind the creation. And so if everything is a fractal throughout the entire known universe, I believe that a fractal of the God consciousness, the divine energy itself, is in every atom in my body. So thereby, I am a fractal of God walking in the flesh, so that God can know what is it like to experience life through the eyes of Billy Carson. What is it like to experience life through the eyes of Paul Anthony Wallace?
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. It's a very Platonic way of seeing things, and I see it that way too. There's a moment in the gospel where people were accusing Jesus of equating himself with God, and he says, but doesn't the scripture say ye are all gods? And then there's a wonderful definition of God, the New Testament God, given by the Apostle Paul in the book of Acts, chapter 17. He's talking to a non-religious audience. So they're not Jewish believers, they're not Christian believers. So he needs to clarify what he means by God. He's using the Greek word theos.